Literally, before I went to go to bed.
There's a connection by the nose to the brain via the olfactory nerve that doesn't take place through the mouth. Memory is better, concentration is better, attention span is better by nasal breathing. That doesn't happen with mouth breathing.
Okay, let's just start. Welcome to a new episode of the Bridging podcast.
Tomorrow is going to happen whatever we do. Is it better to go into tomorrow trusting a voice, a practice, process, a way forward? Or is it better to go into tomorrow filled with fear and not believing the things that have gotten you here so far?
Create a new reality. I close my eyes and I will be there. I will dream it. Welcome to the new episode of the Bridging podcast. I'm here together today with Patrick McKeown. I hope I pronounced it right.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. Great. So Patrick is a breathing expert, breathing trainer, author, and lecturer. He suffered with severe asthma through his childhood and into his 20s until he discovered and started practicing the breathing method of the Russian doctor Konstantin Buteyko. This had such a fundamental impact on his quality of life that he decided to retrain as a breathing instructor and to build a career helping people improve their health and reach their full potential. He has been teaching breathing techniques since 2002. Later on, he found the oxygen advantage that has helped thousands of people to optimize athletic performance and endurance, control anxiety and panic disorder, improve sleep, improve their overall health, and reach their full potential. He's the author of best-selling books, including this book, The Oxygen Advantage. I've read it. I definitely recommend it. Welcome, Patrick, on Bridging.
Thanks very much. Great to be here, Özlem.
It's really nice having you here. I actually want to start with a very short story and we'll ask my question then. So a friend of mine recommended your book 3 years ago, Jay, and his colleague and close friend read your book, did the teachings, followed all the teachings, and he suffered for all his life from asthma. And then everything, all the symptoms were gone. He went to the doctor and his doctor signed a clean bill of health. And he said, it's a miracle. I don't know what you have down. It's a miracle. So my first question is, what happened here?
I suppose there's a few different things. We have to recognize that people with asthma will breathe typically a little bit faster and harder and often through their mouth. So they're taking cold, dry, unfiltered air into their lungs, which is going to aggravate the airways. They often bypass their mouth, so they're not harnessing nasal nitric oxide. Nitric oxide from the nose is a bronchodilator. It's antiviral. It helps to redistribute the blood throughout the lungs. And also by breathing lighter and lower and slower, you don't traumatize the airways as much. So in the main, people with asthma, when they're having their symptoms, and even when they're not having their symptoms, their breathing pattern can be feeding into their condition. And what we do is we highlight that and address hyperventilation and improve breathing efficiency.
And then a doctor could say, like, this is a miracle. What happened here?
Not always.
Not always.
Yeah, there's some people who do. Some people who completely can alleviate their asthma. We have to consider that asthma, if you have it over a period of time, there may be some residual scar tissue or whatever. So, but at the same time, we would normally expect a reduction of symptoms of about 50% in 2 weeks. And the clinical trials typically show a reduction of the need for medication, inhaled corticosteroid medication, of about 50% in 3 to 6 months. But even if we were to think of that we can improve the quality of life of the person with asthma, and we can significantly help them to reduce their need for medication. There's something positive in that. It's quite interesting, Özlem, because Ireland, for example, has a very high rate of asthma.
Yeah.
And yet, even though we have been teaching this since 2002, it hasn't always been embraced, put it that way. And it's unfortunate that the authorities that work with asthma don't always want to know of a breathing technique or don't even want to investigate it, because the key is, if somebody with asthma is going around with their mouth open, why are they breathing through their mouth? Their mouth does nothing. And by breathing through the mouth, it's going to aggravate their asthma. And that should be the first step. And there's no harm in doing that. There's no side effects in encouraging people to do simple breathing techniques, and it could help them a lot.
Yeah. So, let's actually break it a little bit down. If we look at the physiology of breathing, what happens exactly with our body, in our body, when we breathe?
The primary driver to breathe is carbon dioxide. So there's a gas that's produced by our metabolism. So we as human beings, we eat food, and we breathe in air. And when food and oxygen meets, it generates energy. And a byproduct of the generation of energy is water and carbon dioxide. So we produce this gas, carbon dioxide, internally. Carbon dioxide goes from the tissues into the blood. And as carbon dioxide increases in the blood and blood pH drops, the brain reacts by sending the message to breathe. So the primary driver to breathe, every breath that we are taking right now, is driven by carbon dioxide. But some people are overly sensitive to the gas carbon dioxide than others. And those people who are overly sensitive will have faster and harder breathing patterns. They will feel, for example, when they do physical exercise, that they run out of air. They might feel that they can't take a satisfying breath. So really, the whole aspect of breathing is that oftentimes people feel that breathing is driven by oxygen. It's not, unless your oxygen levels drop by about 50%. It's driven by carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide isn't just a waste gas, but performs a number of very important functions in the human body. So, for example, it's very common with people with poor breathing to have cold hands and cold feet, to have brain fog, and our blood circulation is influenced. And we have 50,000 miles of blood vessels in the human body, so about 70,000 kilometers thereabouts. That's influenced by how hard and how fast we breathe. And we have to dispel the idea that the more air you bring into your body, the more oxygen that gets delivered to your tissues and organs. That's not correct. You need a certain amount of oxygen, of course, but you also need a certain amount of carbon dioxide. And if you breathe too hard and too fast, you remove too much carbon dioxide from the lungs, and this in turn reduces carbon dioxide in the blood leaving the lungs. As carbon dioxide in the blood is reduced, blood vessels constrict. There's a left shift of what's called the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, but less oxygen gets delivered throughout the body. So the harder and faster one person breathes, the less oxygen that's delivered, and the more likely that they are tipped into an increased stress response, increased sympathetic drive.
Actually, overbreathing is kind of harming our body.
Yes.
And there's also like when I know, like when I overbreathe, when I was overbreathing, I was just breathing from the chest, also from here, which actually brought me more stress. I was already stressed. I was breathing here, and then it was more like, and I was hyperventilating and went to a hyperventilation like breathing coach when I was 21 years ago.
It's very interesting.
It was actually, I was in a more vicious circle because I went there because I was breathing too high, and the more higher I was breathing, the more it stayed there. And then, I kind of got some medicine, like, hey, you should get the medicine and then it will be better. I never used it. I never had asthma, but I would say I had a lot of allergies, like dust allergy. When I was waking up, I woke up with a stuffy nose all the time. But I will come to the techniques, and I will also tell later on when we talk what happened to me. But what is the right way of breathing that we actually don't take too much breath in, and also don't take too less? Find exactly the balance where it is right for our bodies and our health.
Well, I suppose breathing should be effortless, and it's not by necessarily paying total attention and being, having all of our attention on the breath all the time, because breathing is involuntary. But so our goal is to practice breathing exercises to help change breathing patterns, that when we're not thinking about our breathing is going to be better because of the practice of the exercises. So good breathing is in and out through the nose. Good breathing is with a normal respiratory rate. During rest, the exhalation should be about 1.5 times the length of the inhalation. It's very important that the exhalation is slower than the inhalation.
So if you actually breathe in for 4, you breathe out for 6. When you breathe on for 2, you breathe out for 4. Is it what you're saying?
It is if you were to count it, but we don't always count it, because the problem with counting the breath per se is that it doesn't take into consideration the tidal volume. So it doesn't take into consideration how much volume is the person breathing during that breath. So it's kind of relative. So if we think about it again, so your breathing should be in and out through the nose. It should be driven by the diaphragm, so 80% of the breathing should be low and maybe 20% from the upper chest. Breathing should be regular, a normal respiratory rate, normal tidal volume, but above all else, breathing should be effortless. So when our breathing is effortless, well then there's less likely to be a problem. But if there's effort involved with our breathing, you were feeling air hunger, you were saying you were breathing faster, upper chest, of course that's going to drive a stress response. And that's the one thing about our breath, that even though breathing is an involuntary activity, we have some degree of control over it. And by influencing our breathing, we can influence the autonomic nervous system. It's a very helpful way to help to regulate states.
Yes. So, the people that are reading your book or listening to your teaching and practicing it, you might know it, but practice is a very different dimension. What will they learn, and what is the oxygen advantage? What does it do with our body? What are the pillars? Can you tell me a little bit about the pillars? I know that there are 2 pillars which I have applied myself. Can you tell us more about that?
So the everyday pillar is functional breathing patterns, and that's about looking at your breathing from a biochemical point of view and from a biomechanical point of view, and also slow breathing to help to bring balance to the autonomic nervous system. It's guidelines of how to breathe during rest, during sleep, and during physical exercise. The second pillar then are stressor exercises. So here we do breath holds to lower blood oxygen saturation and to increase carbon dioxide in the blood. And this disturbs the blood acid-base balance, and this causes the body to make adaptations. And those adaptations include improved buffering capacity to delay fatigue, for example, in sports, increased strength of the diaphragm, but also from a psychological point of view, that we do a long breath hold to create a feeling of suffocation, a feeling of air hunger. And the objective is to relax into that feeling of suffocation. And we're training our brain not to react to the feeling of discomfort. Now, in terms of the breathing exercise that we do, the breathing exercise should always be tailored according to the individual. Some people have a very strong reaction to the fear of suffocation. They need to go easy and they need to gently gear up over a period of time. Other people are able to push it that little bit harder. And that's the one thing about breathing exercise, Özlem. It should never be a one-size-fits-all. We all react a little bit differently to breathing exercise depending on our breathing pattern and also whatever conditions that we may have, including asthma, anxiety, panic disorder. Women's breathing is different to male breathing. There's quite a few influences there, and that's why breathing should, I always feel that if we just say to somebody to breathe in for 4 seconds and out for 6 seconds, well, depending on if you have 10 different people, those 10 people can take fundamentally different breaths, even though they're breathing in for 4 seconds and out for 6 seconds. Are they breathing high? Are they breathing low? And what's the tidal volume that they are bringing in during that 4 second in, 6 second out? So these are the things. Breathing is a little bit more complex. It's simple, but it's complex at the same time.
So a person X might bring a total different breathing volume in 4 seconds than person Y.
Yes.
So you're really, and that's the one on 1.5. Like you need the volume that you take in 1.5 times more. That volume needs to get out. But you also shouldn't really focus or stress or like, am I breathing right? It should be a normal, effortless process.
Yes, the exhalation should always be, during rest, it should always be slow. Now, the volume that you breathe out is going to be the same as the volume that you breathe in. It's just that you're breathing out that volume over a longer period of time.
Yeah. So, the 2 pillars you said, like the first pillar, nasal breathing, that you breathe through your nose and that you breathe, calmly,
yes.
Right? And then there was second, like breathe holding exercises. So I have read your book in 3 months' time, which was surprising for me. Usually I read it 1-2 weeks, but I was like, no, I need to do the teachings. I'm just going to sit down and do it or lay down or whatever. So, and honestly, I started with this tape, and I was at the beginning very scared. I just want to show the listener and the watcher here. Literally before I went to go to bed, I did this and I took actually the very tiniest bit because I thought in case I will just choke or something, then this will just get out. So I used that. I slept the first night, I think maybe 1-2 hours. I can't remember. Then I took it off. I was kind of panicked. But then the second day it went better. Third day or fourth day, I found myself wearing the tape also in the morning. And that's what I did. And what I did, like during, I'm a runner. During my run, I'm very deliberately practicing breathing through my nose. And, usually this first 20, 25 minutes, I need to pay very good attention to it because I'm not used to it. I'm not always like, and then like, not, but just actually normal, closed. And I did that. And also the third thing, what I did is like when I climb the stairs or I run somewhere, whatever, like just I'm in a rush, then I find myself quickly breathing through my mouth. And what I did, I just closed my mouth for a moment and then held my breath and then kept breathing through my nose. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Before I did this, how I woke up very tired. I was every morning, even I don't want to wake up. I woke up anyway, but I was tired, really. Tonight I'm going to go to bed early. I woke up a lot during night. So my sleep cycle was like waking up, sleeping, waking up, sleeping. And especially during a workout of boxing and running, I just became very quickly fatigued. I was like tired. And what happened after using this, I think in 2-3 weeks, I didn't even measure, but I measure my bolts, which I will come there very soon. So what happened with me? I sleep much deeper. It's literally like I put it on, I sleep, I wake up. And when I wake up, like I am not tired. I'm just ready for the day. Let's go. And during the training, as I said, I have a much better stamina. I just feel like, okay, I will continue. Even my boxing teacher, he said, breathe through your mouth. And I said, no, Patrick is going to come on the show. I will make you listen. So this helped me really a lot. And I would like to actually talk more about the bolt. What is that exactly? How can people that listen to this like, hey, I actually also would like to practice, and where should I start? How should I begin? And how do I even know if I breathe right?
So the bolt score is a measurement of the length of time that a person can hold their breath for comfortably. They need to be sitting down for about 5 minutes or so. They take a normal breath in through their nose and out through their nose and pinch their nose and hold. They time it in seconds until they feel the first definite desire to breathe or the first involuntary movement of the breathing muscles. When they let go, their breath should be fairly normal. So it's not the length of a maximum breath hold. You're only timing it. How long can you hold your breath until the brain tells you to resume breathing?
It's not about being like checking how long can I keep my breath in. No, it's about really when does the first involuntary breath come?
Or the involuntary contraction of the diaphragm. It's when it wants to come. And we always exhale first and then we hold the breath. So we don't breathe in and hold the breath. We have a normal breath in, normal breath out, and then hold the breath. So in terms of the adult population, if the bolt score is less than 25 seconds, it's an indicator that breathing is dysfunctional. And if the bolt score is above 25 seconds, it's an indicator that breathing is functional. And the relevance of this is when breathing is dysfunctional, okay, 22 seconds, 23 seconds, you're nearly there. But say an individual with a bolt score of 10 seconds, that person will be breathing faster, harder, irregular. They will have disproportionate breathlessness during physical exercise. They're going to gas out too soon. They're wasting energy unnecessarily. They're going to have physical fatigue. They're likely to have mental fatigue. Their sleep is impacted. They can be prone to cramps. A lot can be going on. So this is why it's very important to train breathing and train the brain. And you can do both together. I work with fighters. You talked about boxers. One boxer that has done our program is Michael Conlon. And last Saturday week, he had quite a big fight. He's featherweight and he won his fight in the first round. He's now fighting for a world champion in March. So it's very easy to bring breathing protocols into any fighter's regime. When you're on the pads, doing it breathing in and out through the nose. You're on the bag, in and out through the nose. You're doing warm-up with breath holds. In between rounds, so for example, you do your 3-minute round. How do you get your recovery to bring down your heart rate as quick as possible? By changing your breathing. How do you train the brain that the boxer is concentrated all the way through the fight? Because you will have youngsters now that are stuck looking into their mobile phones and a constant wave of distraction. And they're practicing distraction all day long, and yet they are supposed to have focus on the fight. It's not going to happen. So it's just as important to train the brain as it is to train breathing. And I know these functions have often been overlooked, but if you think of a fighter, the 9th and 10th round, physical fatigue is setting in. His mind is starting to wander. it's game over. And also it's very important to gauge your opponent's breathing, because if you pay attention to your opponent's breathing, you will know when they are gassing out. You will know when they are getting fatigued. And that's when you can start laying in. You know, there's things about breathing, and we can train breathing. Really what we want to do is, with nose breathing, as you were talking about, Özlem, it's not about training with breathing in and out through the nose to the point that we go blue. It's about adding that extra adaptation. So during light and moderate intensity, whereby you can sustain fairly comfortable nasal breathing, yes, you feel air hunger, but you continue breathing in and out through the nose. And over weeks, your body adapts to this. You're able to tolerate higher carbon dioxide. You're able to push yourself harder and faster with reduced breathlessness. Now, during a fight, of course, when the going gets tough, you have to switch to mouth breathing. So there's a time to nose breathe and there's a time to mouth breathe. But nose breathing is a tremendous way to help train the body, but also train the mind, because when you breathe in and out through your nose, visual spatial awareness is better. There's a connection by the nose to the brain via the olfactory nerve that doesn't take place through the mouth. Memory is better. Concentration is better. Attention span is better by nasal breathing. That doesn't happen with mouth breathing. Visual spatial awareness would be relevant to somebody on a football field. And it's probably one of those evolutionary traits that as our ancestors were in an open environment, they may have had their sights on something close by, but at the same time, they had to have the ability to read and scan the environment around them. So just like a football player, you know, they're watching where the ball is, but at the same time, they're watching everything that's going on in the pitch. That's visual spatial awareness. That's improved with nose breathing versus mouth breathing.
Because it is increasing also the attention span, focus, memory. It really helps brain function better.
Yes, it does. And probably from a number of different perspectives. You know, with nose breathing, you typically have slower breathing. With slower breathing, the mind is calmer.
Exactly.
But if we go into faster breathing, the mind is more agitated. More agitation of the mind, increased thought activity, increased distraction. How do we access flow states? How do we get into that state of flow whereby our attention is moving simultaneously with time? For that, we need to have balanced physiology, but we also need to have deep sleep. So we're using breathing to help to bring the physiology into balance, but also to improve the sleep quality that you spoke about earlier on. How many athletes and how many individuals wake up with a dry mouth in the morning? We should never wake up with a dry mouth in the morning.
So, you know, I have to think about children at this moment of time, you know, also especially the parents that are listening right now. You know, I am a part-time teacher at primary school, and what I see with kids, when they listen to any instruction or when they play, they are just hanging like this. Exactly. You know, there are so many kids, so many young kids, you know, I think 4 to 8, 9 year, maybe even a little bit older, they are mouth breathing. And yesterday I was with my niece. I saw her sleeping at 9. She was also mouth breathing. I almost wanted to kind of take a tape and put, but I was scared too. Like, what do you have to say to the parents and to educators which are working with kids that are mouth breathing? What kind of effect does it have? Because we keep complaining about the children, they are not focused, it's the technology. I mean, they don't have any concentration, they forget things, what we tell, but it's also partly breathing as far as what I understood just now.
Yes, there's no question. And none of this is new information. There was a study that was conducted in Stratford-upon-Avon that was published in the journal Pediatrics. And the researcher is Karen Bonuck, B-O-N-U-C-K. She looked at 11,000 British school children. And she looked at children with sleep issues such as snoring, stopping of the breath, and mouth breathing. She concluded that children with sleep issues at age 5, if untreated, had a 40% increased risk of special education needs by age 8. The brain develops during slow wave sleep. If the child is breathing in and out through the nose with good breathing patterns, that they don't have sleep disorders, they're more likely to stay in slow wave sleep for longer periods of time, and this assists with development of the brain. So the unfortunate thing here is that society isn't aware of the impact of mouth breathing on the health of the child, and society isn't aware of the impact of mouth breathing on the long-term health. So I was one of those kids in school, and I really struggled. If you have poor sleep, waking up tired, as you described earlier on, you don't have the energy and focus to pay attention to what the teacher is saying. But also your mood is impacted. And these kids are not only, they can be inattentive, but they can be considered then troublesome. So Society is putting a label on these kids. They're not intelligent. their hard work, but nobody is looking at their sleep. It's really high time that the healthcare professionals, including the dentists and the medical doctors, the physiotherapists, the occupational therapists, and all of the disciplines that work with these children, that they start paying attention to whether the child is breathing through the nose, how are they breathing during sleep, how is their airway, do they have tongue tie, and all of these are factors, because these children are not going to reach their full potential if they're hanging their mouths open. And the estimates, well, it's not even estimates, studied children, the incidence of mouth breathing in studied children ranges from between 25% to 50%. It's quite a lot.
Actually, I want to ask my question that was going to come at the end, because it's very close to that. This guy that recovered from asthma, which got a clean bill of health, he had a question for you, and he said, if you were the Secretary of Health, what is the first thing that you would change about the way the current system works right now?
It's a very interesting question. Changing the current system is very, very difficult, because from a financial aspect, there's too much of a motivation to keep the existing structure in place. But there has to be research done on breathing techniques, and there has to be research done on the importance of nose breathing for various conditions, but not just about nose breathing, about changing breathing patterns to help with these conditions. The research is few and far between, because who is going to pay for it? Breathing is not that thing that's so commercially driven, but from a moral and an ethical point of view, we need to be teaching children the importance of breathing in and out through the nose, with the tongue resting up in the roof of the mouth. Like, there's another side to this, is orthodontics. Yeah. Children who are mouth breathing have crooked teeth. Now, I went in on PubMed yesterday, and any of the parents listening to this can do the same. PubMed is a national database, the US database of pretty much most scientific and medical papers that are published or stored in this database. Do a search, mouth breathing, malocclusion. Malocclusion is crooked teeth. It will bring up about 700 papers. Go through those papers. And mouth breathing, you will always see associated with malocclusion. Now, okay, you could say, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that mouth breathing is causing malocclusion, but people in the field are saying it is. So if we have a child with their mouth open, the tongue isn't resting up in the roof of the mouth. And as a result, the jaws, the maxilla, which is the top jaw, is narrower and V-shaped. There's not enough room then for the tongue, teeth are crooked. But then the problem is that the tongue is more likely to encroach the airway, and the child is susceptible to sleep issues. Because the tongue hasn't been resting up in the roof of the mouth, the child may have a high, narrow palate. Their palate now is infringing the nasal cavity. They don't feel comfortable breathing through the nose. Their face is growing longer. Their jaws are set back. And this is an absolute disaster. And the dental profession have been debating this for 100 years. So coming back to your friend's question, we really have to take the politics out of this, and we have to drive real change. But I don't see it happening. I only see it happening from parents. And my drive over the last 20 years was put the information to the hands of the people who will actually bring about this change. Change will happen when the professionals are losing money if they continue with their existing practices. Finance is the primary motivator for change. And I can understand it from an orthodontic point of view, and there's some tremendous orthodontists who get this. There's some tremendous medical doctors who get this. But ultimately, what's being taught in the universities, it's the universities that I would have fault at. Why are the lecturers in the universities not looking at the simple things such as respiration? It's a most vital function of the human being. And it's a vital function that affects all other functions, or at least the major functions such as sleep, respiration, and mental health. Even looking at the mental health population, 75% of the anxiety and panic disorder population have dysfunctional breathing. These people have irregular breathing patterns, faster breathing, upper chest breathing, which is feeding into their mental health. And it's a shame. It's a shame that, breathing has been overlooked. And probably partly because breathing has been taught, I would say, not up to par. And there was too much baggage associated with breathing techniques, too much mysticism, too much left of field. And that's put people off. There's nothing left of field about breathing. I work now with breathing with, the boxer last week, elite musicians, world-class musicians, snipers, military, police, corporates, every walk of life. There's room for this with everybody, because we as human beings, we should have the knowledge of being able to influence our sleep, our respiration, our mental health, our focus, our concentration. It's very important.
It's actually a shame that we don't have in the schooling system, at least in the Netherlands and in Europe, that we don't we teach maths, we teach science, we teach whatever, literacy, grammar, art. We don't have any meditation or breathing, breath work, or like where we can learn breathing techniques. How do you really breathe better? Like I had a parent, she said, like, one of the students that has focus problems. She said, like, this is what I've been hearing for all her life. But what is the solution? What is the solution? No one knows.
Child has sleep problems. The child has sleep issues,
Yeah.
Go in on YouTube and put in search term finding Conor Deegan. Deegan. And I was presenting at a conference in the States going back quite a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago. It was presented by the American Academy of Physiological Medicine and Dentistry, the AAPMD. Conor Deegan was there. His parents put a video together. Okay, it's one case, but it's only an example of what parents are having to go through. Their children are struggling. I struggled. I left school at 14 years of age. The first time I wrote about it was in the book Atomic Focus. I did go back to school. I didn't leave school to be a waster. I left school out of a total sense of frustration. I was the child sitting there, and it was absolutely pointless me being sitting there. I was sitting there with brain fog, couldn't pick up anything. And all it was doing is setting me back and giving me the label at that point that I was a stupid kid. I didn't have the intelligence that the other kids would have. So I left. And my goal was to become a supermarket manager. And that's what I was doing. And my goal eventually then was to be a shop owner. That's what I wanted to do. But I went back to school 1 year later. I studied hard and I was very driven and I got the results, but I was studying for 10 and 12 hours per day. It could have been a lot easier. It would be tremendous to see the education system bringing in functional breathing, simple ideas, simple techniques that can be provided to children. One of our quests now is to help push this awareness. And I just recently spent $150,000 on a new app. And the app is being launched this week. So when people are listening to this now, we're just going through testing phase. And if you've got an iPhone, I can send you on the link. But the app has got 130 different videos. It's got pretty much all of the exercise for children, for adults. You put in your details and it will give you a breathing program. The app is to assist Oxygen Advantage instructors as well, because an Oxygen Advantage instructor is working with their clients. But then when the Oxygen Advantage instructor goes, the client is able to download the app and follow the breathing instruction that the Oxygen Advantage instructor has just gave them. So my objective is, we didn't charge for this. So, from a business point of view, it might be a total disaster, and it could be. But our goal intuitively is get it out there. We need to get breathing out there.
So nice. This is really nice. I'm going to be the first one that's going to use this. Sure. What is the app called? It's called?
Oxygen Advantage.
Oxygen Advantage. Okay, we will put it in the episode notes. Patrick, about Wim Hof, about breathing techniques and all, you were the one that I was reading, but I also know about Wim Hof, also as a Dutchie, I'm from the Netherlands.
Of course.
Honestly, I have a lot of friends which are practicing his breathing techniques. I don't, because I don't like the cold showers and all. But what is your view on the Wim Hof methods, and what are there some similarities, and what are the differences between the Oxygen Advantage and Wim Hof? But first of all, your view on it.
Like all breathing techniques, they should be tailored according to the individual who is doing them. And I've made plenty of mistakes with breathing techniques, using breath holds, putting people into panic attacks, people with chronic fatigue syndrome. We have to consider that the Wim Hof method is a stressor. Hyperventilation is a stressor, and long breath holds are a stressor. You've got a double stress there. We also have to consider that doing the long breath hold, especially during the third cycle, blood oxygen saturation can drop to below 80%. When it hits 70%, you're getting disoriented. When it goes below 60 and 50%, there's a risk of passing out. But there's also a reduced blood flow to the brain. I have a question as to whether it's good to be reducing the blood flow to the brain to the point, and a daily practice, and maybe doing it even 2 to 3 times per day. What's the long-term implications? And none of us know the idea there. I think Wim Hof is doing tremendous work in putting his breathing techniques out there, in getting awareness of breathing and driving breathing. There's a place definitely for stress or breathing exercises. We use them too. We do one breathing exercise now. We have brought in hyperventilation. We were doing breath holding anyway. So there is a role. But just as even with our own breathing exercises, I've made mistakes with them, you know, and I've put people into not good situations, driving up their anxiety, driving up their panic. That's why I'm always cautious with giving breathing exercises out there as a kind of one size fits all. It's not that way. And there will be people who will fall between the stools. There will be people who maybe the harder and faster breathing, it shouldn't be for them. Maybe they should be down regulating. And the other thing from a breathing perspective is, I suppose it comes back to my background. I was working with chronically sick people. That was my main work, always, still is to this day. It's only since 2013 that I've been working with healthy people with oxygen advantage. But before that, it was chronic sick people. I have to look at people's breathing 24/7. And if we're going to stress their breathing, if we're going to stress their body and mind, we also need to bring in recovery. So there's a few aspects to it. So overall, a wonderful technique, the Wim Hof method is. It should be tailored to the individual. If somebody is practicing it and they feel that they're not quite sure, maybe instead of taking 30 hyperventilating breaths, maybe do 10. Do 10 hyperventilating breaths, then exhale and hold. Hold for a moderate air hunger. Then breathe in and hold your breath for 5 to 10 seconds. Then do 10 hyperventilation. And if you feel that's fine, if you're listening to your body and your body is telling you, yes, this is really good for me, then you could try 15, try 20. But dip your toes into the water. It's the way I work when I'm working with people with anxiety or panic disorder, because I would assume that quite a few people are drawn to the Wim Hof technique, not just for physical performance, but also from the mental health point of view. I think it's important to dip the toe into the water and to see how does your body react, and then just gauge it, but also pay attention to your blood oxygen saturation. Do some research yourself. Do you really want your blood oxygen saturation going below 60%? That's a question. We don't have the answer.
The listener or the watcher now, when she or he think like, hey, the oxygen advantage is for me. Do you need to be chronically sick, or you are a healthy person, since 2013? Like, who is it exactly for? When could someone just pick up the book or just go to your website or think like, hey, I want to do a training with you? When should they start doing it? Is it for everyone?
Pretty much. Not everybody's going to do it, but pretty much, anybody who wants to regulate states. Is there a time that people may give public presentations? Is there a time that somebody is giving a job interview? Is there a time somebody is doing physical exercise? Is there a time that somebody has insomnia at night or snoring or obstructive sleep apnea? Is there a time that somebody has a stuffy nose? Breathing is something that we carry with us all day long. And we use simple tools. Now the exercises have evolved. There's a more recent book, Atomic Focus, and there's another book called The Breathing Cure, which came out now with 25 different exercises. And I have a new book coming out in January called Breathing for Yoga, because I would love to see functional breathing and different breathing techniques coming into the yoga community, because they have such a reach and yoga is so popular. And can you imagine the day that the yoga instructor is able to bring breathing exercises into their practice to help directly people with asthma, with panic disorder, with anxiety, and to improve their resilience. So, life can be stressful. That's the reality of life. There's societal pressures on everybody. The child in school has a certain pressure to perform. They leave school, they get into university, there's a pressure to perform. They get out of university, get into the workforce, there's a pressure to perform. They have to get out and buy their house, meet a partner. It's all of these things, and society is driving these things. And the one thing that you have is that with focus on your breathing, and it's going beyond mindfulness. Mindfulness was fine 2,500 years ago, it was developed. Awareness of the breath is wonderful, but what about when we're under chronic stress? Our breathing patterns are changing. We need to be able to counter this chronic stress. So having those tools to bring them into our way of life, and in combination with that, is also going to generate awareness. You have your focus on your breathing. You have your focus on the body. You have your focus on the present moment. You're living life as opposed to being stuck in the head. So there's a spiritual component about it. And I know the word spiritual may turn people off, but ultimately we've a number of choices here as human beings. Are we going to spend all of our life drowning in thought? Or are we actually going to experience life? And we experience life by being able to bring our attention into the moment. But the person who is drowning in thought, as I was back in my 20s, we have poor concentration, we have fatigue, we have anxiety, we're constantly worrying. Life is not nice, life is hard, and we can make life hard because our mind sabotages that life. But we can also make our life softer, and we can make our life softer by having the tools to bring a softness to how we interpret our life to be.
Very, very nice. And how about the safety, the oxygen advantage? Is that 100% safe?
Again, strong breathing exercises, you have to dip your toe into the water. They are not safe for everybody. For people with chronic fatigue syndrome, I would say go really, really easy. For people with asthma, if you just have asthma alone, you can do a combination of light breathing and the long breath holds. They're pretty effective, in fairness. If you have sleep apnea, focus more on light, slow and low breathing. If you have anxiety and panic disorder, start off with very small, gentle breath hold exercises, the breathing recovery or the warm-up exercise. Don't do the long breath hold exercises. Could put you into a panic attack. It is important to tailor the exercises. In general, the exercises are fine, but the ones to keep an eye on are the stressor exercises. They're the ones that cause problems. For some people, they're great and they cause really positive adaptations. But for other people, they push them into too much of a stress response. That's not ideal.
And for parents with kids, they have learned a lot, what you just have told about the way the kids breathe and what it does with them, for their brain. If there's one practice or one exercise they could do with their kids, either it is like taping their mouth while sleeping, either something else, what could that be?
With children, it's very important to establish that the child can actually breathe through their nose, first of all. There's a very simple technique to help decongest the nose. You take a normal breath in and out through your nose, you pinch your nose and hold, and you gently nod your head up and down holding the breath. You'll find this exercise on YouTube. And then during the day, what I would suggest is that you use a tape, especially if the child has got chronic mouth breathing. Now, we have our own tape called Myo tape, and it's an elasticated tape that surrounds the lips to bring it together. We have the child wear it when they are distracted, when they're watching television, if they're doing homework, if they're playing with toys, etc. And the purpose of the tape is that because it's elasticated, if the child forgets to breathe through the nose and they open their mouth, the tape will pull their lips together and it will bring them back to nose breathing. So instead of the mom or dad saying, breathe through your nose, breathe through your nose, breathe through your nose, because that sounds like a broken record after a while, the child is wearing the tape for 15 minutes to 30 minutes per day. And every time they forget about breathing through the nose, the tape will remind them. Then when the child is able to breathe in and out through the nose safely, and the child is over 4 or 5 years of age, more so 5 years of age, then we will consider myotape during sleep. So, and the best exercise then to help with the long term is, we call it the steps exercise or paces exercise. And that's also available free on YouTube. And it will be in the app. It's currently in the Buteco Clinic app, but it will be also in the Oxygen Advantage app.
Cool, very nice, this one. Would you be able and willing to do with us a breathing exercise before we actually close off?
Sure. So if you want to get a better night's sleep and you want to down-regulate before sleep, how do you help to reduce overstimulation? So if you put one hand on your chest and one hand just above your navel, allow your shoulders to drop, bring your attention from your mind onto your breathing, and just simply allow your breathing to soften. So there's your exhalation. And then when you breathe in, take a softer breath air into your nose and a really relaxed and a slow and a gentle breath out. So the breath out has to be really, really slow, slow, slow. And now when you're breathing in, is take a softer breath in. So breathe so softly, almost that you feel the air hardly coming into your nose, and then a really relaxed and a slow and a gentle breath out. And the purpose with this exercise is by having a really soft, gentle breath in and a relaxed and a slow and a gentle breath out. The goal is to reduce the volume of air that you are breathing. You are doing this when you feel a sensation of air hunger. And air hunger tells you that carbon dioxide is increased in the blood. That helps to stimulate the vagus nerve. And you know that you're down-regulating if you have increased watery saliva in the mouth. So for people who might feel a little bit stressed, always think about slowing down the speed of your exhalation. If you have slow breathing, you have control over the breath, you'll have control to some degree over the mind. So physiologically, when you take that really soft breath in through the nose and the relaxed and a slow and a gentle breath out, your body is telling the brain that the body is safe. The brain is here to protect us. Because whenever we're in a state of stress or a difficult situation, we don't have slow breathing. We have fast breathing. And the brain is interpreting that when breathing is fast, the brain is interpreting that the body is under threat. And all the brain wants to do is to get you out of there. You're not going to fall asleep. The brain will keep you awake because the brain is here to protect you. So be very careful about the information from the body up to the brain. But simply knowing that, if you stress, if you have fast breathing, it's a stressor. If you have a very soft breath in, really relaxed and slow, gentle breath out. And even to do that for maybe 5 or 10 minutes before sleep. Or if you have a difficult situation, bring your attention into the body. Take a soft breath in and a really relaxed, slow, gentle breath out. And your body is telling the brain that things are okay.
I almost forgot the conversation while doing the exercise, actually. I was so relaxed. Patrick, thank you so much. Where can people find you? What is the website, the socials? Can you please mention it?
The website is oxygenadvantage.com and all of the socials are the same name. And then from the health point of view, it's buteyko-clinic.com. So that's after a Ukrainian doctor back in the 1950s. And I trained with him, and that would have formed the basis then of the work with the Oxygen Advantage, but we expanded then with Oxygen Advantage. So there's YouTube, lots of videos, Instagram, TikTok. So yeah, unfortunately, as much as I don't like social media, we've put ourselves out there. We've had to. So
yeah, we will put it all in the episode's notes, but I highly appreciate your presence here. Thank you so much. It's not only your presence here, actually, but I really thank you for the book. It helped me so much. Thank you. Really, thank you.
You're very welcome.